The readings today are really all about marriage. And when these readings are about marriage, I feel a little awkward preaching about it because not being married myself, I kind of lack this firsthand experience. I feel maybe some of you have seen that movie, The Princess Bride. Some of you seen it's a comedy movie. It's kind of old. But there's a famous scene there where there's this priest who's kind of ridiculous, and he's preaching at a marriage, and he begins by saying, marriage, and he goes on like this and kind of gives all these pious platitudes about marriage. So I'm going to try to kind of avoid that this evening. But at the same time, although I'm not married, I've had the privilege to accompany many people as they prepare to get married, to see people make that courageous act of exchanging vows, to be there for one another, regardless of the difficulties that lie ahead. I've had the privilege and the blessing as well to journey with different people through their marriage as they encounter great blessings, but also difficulties and struggles. The readings then in the first reading in the Gospel point us then to this reality of marriage, the blessing that marriage is, but also the struggle and challenge it can be at times. In the first reading from the book of Genesis, we hear about what is seen to be kind of the origins of marriage, or what it means in the Old Testament. We heard this remarkable story of Eve being pulled from the rib of Adam. And this is seen all over the art world. I was thinking about in the Sistine Chapel. We find Michelangelo's great fresco where he shows the beginning of creation until the end of time with Jesus coming as a judge. And you see this scene depicted where Eve is taken there from the rib of Adam, the side of Adam. And of course, this story isn't meant to be a kind of scientifically accurate account. This is not meant to be taken literally. What we find here in this story from Genesis is a remarkable wisdom reflection. The sages of Israel, through God's Spirit, are considering important questions. What is the place of people in this world? How do we relate to creation? And here, particularly, what is this relationship between man and woman? And in reflecting on this, they highlight several important truths. The first is the incredible closeness or partnership that a married couple make. So previous to this account, where Adam comes to meet Eve, we see that all these different animals are brought towards Adam in the hope that he will find a helper, a partner. And we see that none of them are suitable. It's only Eve who is a suitable partner because she's kind of made from the exact same stuff as Adam. They're very, very close. And this closeness is highlighted from where Eve is taken. She's taken from the side, the rib of Adam. And again, this is not meant to be scientific, but is symbolizing that Eve is very, very close to Adam, close to her heart. It symbolizes as well that this man and woman, this husband and wife, are meant to go through life side by side in this incredible partnership that God has blessed and God has brought them together. We see then in Genesis an incredible reflection about marriage and the value it has and how it's a part of God's plan. Jesus in the Gospel today continues to speak about marriage. And in doing this, it seems that Jesus has two aims. He's got two aims in the Gospel. The first is to show his care for people, especially his care for people who might be in vulnerable situations in their marriage. And secondly, what Jesus is trying to do is to promote the beauty of goodness. So Jesus is wanting to care for people and as well promote the goodness and beauty of marriage to encourage others. So let's start with that first kind of mission of Christ, caring for people, especially the vulnerable. And we can miss this if we don't pay attention to the context in which Jesus is speaking in the gospel today. So Jesus in the gospel is brought into a debate. The Pharisees come to him and ask, is it okay for a man to divorce his wife? And here they're referencing the book of Deuteronomy, and Jesus brings this up. What did Moses allow? And they explain that Moses allowed a man to divorce his wife. Now, this is really important to keep in mind. Deuteronomy allows a man to divorce the wife, not vice versa. And in fact, at this time, in Jesus' time, women who were divorced were in an incredibly vulnerable situation. They had no way really to provide for themselves, and oftentimes, if they had no family support, would look forward to a life of destitution if they were divorced. So Jesus is trying to care for women, especially those who are in vulnerable marriage situations. At Jesus' time, it was taken for granted that divorce was permitted. The The debate was about what grounds divorce was allowed. So in the book of Deuteronomy, it says that a man can divorce his wife if he finds some problem in her or some indecency, is what it says literally. And so the rabbis at Christ's time would debate what this meant. And some would argue that you could only divorce your wife in very, very serious situations. Others would argue a man could divorce his wife for very trivial reasons. One rabbi famously argued that a man could divorce his wife if she spoiled his dinner. This is literally what was written. So Jesus then is really trying to protect women, protect those who are vulnerable, by going back to the origins of creation to show that divorce was not, separation and divorce are not a part of God's plan from the beginning. Jesus as well, in his mission here, is trying to promote the beauty and the goodness of marriage. Marriage at times could be seen as something kind of obligatory or maybe a social or financial arrangement. But marriage is showing that it is something blessed by God. It is God who brings this couple together, and in this marriage they experience the goodness, the joy, and the life of God. So Jesus then, in his interaction with the Pharisees, has two aims, it seems: to care for those who are in a vulnerable situation when it comes to marriage, and also promote the goodness and beauty of marriage. And we, it would seem then, as the followers of Christ, as his church, are called to continue this kind of twofold mission when it comes to marriage: to care and to encourage. Of course, many people experience joy, peace, and goodness in their marriage, but we recognize, of course, that many people, marriages have difficulties. It can be a source of great pain for different people. Many people have gone through marriages that have ended in divorce or separation. This is a cause of great sorrow for many people. People have experienced cases of abuse or real struggles or difficulties. There are people who would like to marry who cannot. The church, like Christ does, is called to provide care and welcome to all people, regardless of what situation or background that they're coming from, that they can experience in the church a true home, a true family, where they can find healing, where they can find care, and where they can find welcome and inclusion. We then, as the church, are called, I think, to follow through with this mission of Jesus by caring for those who are in vulnerable situations. As well, we're called, like Christ, to promote the goodness, the blessing of marriage, to encourage people. Jesus' teaching about marriage, especially the indissolubility of marriage, the fact that it lasts for the life of those two individuals, was as radical as it was in his time as it is now. But Jesus wants to highlight how this can be a source of life for people, this free gift they give to each other, that in marriage, hopefully it can be a place where they encounter God's goodness and God's grace. We find elsewhere in the scriptures, in Paul's letter to the Ephesians, that marriage is described as being an image or a symbol of the love that Christ has for his church. Jesus then, and the church, is called to continue this, to promote really the goodness of marriage, the beauty that it can be, and encourage and strengthen and support people as they seek to live this vocation. We want to then be caring and as well to be encouraging. Today then, in light of the readings, perhaps it's a call for us to pray for people who find themselves in different situations. We can pray this evening for people preparing to get married, that they have that strength and perseverance in their preparation. We can pray for people who are experiencing difficulties or struggles in their marriages, that the Spirit will support them. And we can pray, especially in Thanksgiving, for those whose marriages encounter blessings, not just for themselves, but for those around them. So we pray then in gratitude for Christ and his message, and pray for the strength to follow through with it, to provide a place of care and encouragement.